Hello, welcome back to Trail Buddy. I'm Mark, and back with me again is Kendall, and we're going to continue our bike build here. So tonight should be pretty fun. We're going to try to put together, reassemble everything that we painted, and probably stop it short of the electrical connections and everything. So tonight's is going to be a whole lot of reassembly of the things we had to take apart just because we wanted to paint them our semi-gloss black or matte, and now we're getting ready to put everything back together. So. What do you want to try to do, Kendall? What do you want to do first for putting stuff back on?
Fork assembly.
Or maybe I guess our handlebars and stuff. We gotta take our tie plate off here, slide our ears back on. We forgot that last time in our haste to get some stuff together. But all right, we'll start on the front end, and I guess we'll just work our way back. All right, Kendall. So for our ears, when they make these castings, there's always some variation here in how they make these. What we do is we've got these little rubber rings here that help take up the variation. And they just slide right over top. Alright, and then put this back in. And this there. So it's okay if these are loose-ish because when we go to clamp everything down here, it'll get it a little bit, but then the headlight bucket, all that whole assembly will hold it all together, so we don't have to be super worried about those. I can hold those. You want to grab the caps. These ones we want to, when we tighten it, Kendall, you got to watch this gap right here on the each side. So our goal is to keep that as even as we absolutely can. And there's also these, I don't know what I call it, knurling or
Yeah, the knurling on
yeah. So we want that to be right in the center of the clamps. All right. Now headlight bucket. All right, so for these guys, we are going to use nylock nuts. That'll help these from rattling loose, then your headlight bucket doesn't kind of fall off when you're going down the road. The trick with these, you want to make sure your bolts are long enough so that you're actually getting into that plastic. Yeah, all that. Okay, now that we're getting ready to put our front fender on, what we're going to have to use is our fender mounting bracket, which this will do two things for us, Kendall. It will, one, move the fender away from that larger engine a little bit, so it'll give us a little more clearance. And two, with these aftermarket fenders that we've got, the center spacing's a little bit closer together. So what we're going to have to do is we'll bolt this here to the triple tree and through into the horn. And then we'll take this, we'll mount that there like that. So the whole assembly will be right there. So again, what that does, it gives us more clearance from, so like right here, so it doesn't quite hit. So it moves it forward a bit. Just enough to where you can't quite see it in relationship to the tire. So hold on to that for a minute. Let me get the right bolts. Okay, so if you can hold our horn bracket, we'll put that in between here. Then here are the washers and lock washers for the top side. And the nuts. Here. So I'll hold that in here.
That needs to go under, right?
That'll go right on top of here. Just like that. So let's put the horn bracket on first. I can hold that too for you if you need help.
Yeah. I just need something.
Oh, careful for the... Oh, wait a minute. Just 1 second.
Oh my gosh, we
I think
just
we chipped
painted
it.
that.
I had the fender upside down, or the bracket. Before we got to redo stuff. So before we go any further, that back of that horn adjustment screw is like almost hitting this frame. It looks like this rib here on this clone frame is quite a bit further than the original one, so we're just going to take that and tweak it a little bit. See? How's that look? Plenty of clearance now?
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so now we need a 10. Here, larger washers here. So what these do is there's a bigger hole in our fenders here just for clearance. We'll take those. Fender's gonna hit our heads of our bolts that we put down before, but there's enough kind of clearance in that fender. All right, so what do we want to do next now? Maybe grab the carburetor, put the intake on.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so kind of we got our gasket surface cleaned up. We got to make sure there's no burrs on here because otherwise what can happen is we can get an air gap and then it'll make all kinds of weird troubleshooting problems. So we're good and clean on our bottom here. We're good and clean on the engine side. Okay, now next we're going to put in our isolator. So this guy will get a gasket. One side has this O-ring seal here on the carburetor. And then the side that doesn't gets the gasket. And then we've got a couple different length of bolts here. So we're going to test fit. We're going to make sure we've got enough room for our
Bolt.
nut and our bolt. So we will need to get... All right, do we have a longer set? All right, so we are going to need 2 nuts for these guys. That didn't come with the kit. Oh, you got them? All right. There we go. Now, let's go ahead and throw our air cleaner on. All right, now what's next? We do our rear fender and our taillight assembly.
Yep, we should do that.
Let's do it. All right, Kendall. So we've got everything pulled to put our rear parts on here, specifically our fender and our taillight bracket, and we also put together our taillight assembly. So we've got our bolt kit here that works with our fender. We also have our fastener kit here that works with the rear taillight assembly. So what that is there's special bolts, and then there's all these little rubber isolators, washers, and standoffs. So we'll go through the parts that make up that. But the easiest thing to do next is our fender here. So let's get that up in there and then grab our fasteners. So there's a front and a back to these fenders. So we've got our 4 fasteners here that are going to mount to the frame, right? And then we've got our one in the center that'll go back to our taillight. Okay, so now that you've got all the bolts started, one of the most important things here is to stop. So what we want to do is we want to try to keep this floating loose. So that way we can have a little bit of adjustment here when we get our taillight on. So we've got that guy. Now let me get all these little rubber pieces out. So these will plug into the holes there. So the flange, I think the wider flange part goes to the bottom, and then you push it up. Actual Honda parts on our clone build. Okay, now we're ready for our tail light. Okay, so there's our rear tail light. I'm gonna snake the wires through a sec. Okay. All right, now what do you think's next? Should we do our controllers and stuff?
Sure.
Do it. All right, we've got our final pieces for tonight. So Kendall learned a valuable lesson about taking pictures of things before we take them apart. So we took these apart, the controllers here, to paint them black, and that was kind of an ordeal. But I think they turned out really, really good. So I think in the end it was really worth the effort. Luckily, we have extra controllers here, so we were okay. So we're gonna go ahead and bolt them guys on here and here. All right, kind of working on that. I'll get the throttle tube together. All right, so I think we're gonna call it for an evening. I'm gonna put this brake handle on here just temporarily to hold it so we don't get it scratched. All right, that does it for tonight. I think it looks pretty. What do you think of the build so far, Kendall? It's looking like a bike now.
It's looking snazzy now. Looking really good.
All right. Well, I think next week we'll get our wire harness laid in, and we'll get some of our internal components put in there, and then we might be even put power to it to turn it over to see how electric start works. So I hope you enjoyed the video so far. You can check these parts out on mytrailbuddy.com.